in the desert of New Mexico, there is a grave. But what lies buried beneath it is not a human body.
It's games. Hundreds of thousands of cartridges covered over with dirt and concrete.
And this grave is proof that once the entire video game industry nearly died completely.
Sounds unbelievable, doesn't it? Because today, games are in your hands, in your computer, on your TV, everywhere. But to get here, it nearly died several times over. So how did it survive? This is its story. Let's go back to the very beginning. The world's earliest games weren't built to be sold. They were born in laboratories from scientists who just wanted to mess around and have fun. In 1958, a physicist took some lab equipment and made a simple tennis game on a small round screen just to entertain visitors to the lab. A few years later, a group of students built a spaceship shooting game on a giant university computer. And there was another engineer who asked a simple question that changed the world. He asked, "Every TV in every home is just for sitting and watching. Why can't we play with it?"
He set out and built a brown prototype box, which later became the world's first home game console. Nobody thought it would become a huge business. It was just a toy for nerds.
But someone saw something. They saw that ordinary people wanted to play this too. In the early 70s, games left the lab and entered the real world. They arrived in the form of coin-operated arcade machines. The first one to explode in popularity was a simple ping-pong game called Pong. It was laughably simple, just 2 lines and a single dot, but people lined up to play it. Then came Space Invaders, the alien shooting game that became a massive hit from Japan. In Japan, this game got so popular, there was even a rumor that it caused a nationwide coin shortage. And then Pac-Man, the round yellow character who became the symbol of that era. Arcades popped up on every street corner. Teenagers all over the world poured a fortune into them. Games had become a real business now, and the money came flooding in. But if people would pay to play in an arcade, what would happen if you could bring the game home to play? This was the birth of the game console. A company called Atari released a machine called the Atari 2600. It changed everything because you could swap cartridges, playing many different games on one machine. It was magic that took the fun of the arcade and put it right in your living room. Atari dominated the market completely, at times holding up to 80% of it. Everything looked bright. The money never stopped flowing. No one at the time could have guessed a disaster was coming. The problem began with greed. Once everyone saw how easy it was to make money from games, everyone wanted to jump in and make them too. New companies sprang up like weeds, each one flooding the market with games. The problem was, most of these games were terrible. There was no quality control, no one screening them, and cartridges piled up on shelves until buyers couldn't tell the good from the bad. And then, the great disaster arrived in the form of 2 games. The first was a home version of Pac-Man, made so sloppily it was far worse than the arcade original. Atari was overconfident, producing 12 million cartridges when there were only 10 million consoles to play them on. But the game that became the legend of disaster was the second one. Atari signed a deal to make a game based on the hit movie E.T. But rushing to have it ready for the Christmas sales, a single programmer was ordered to build the entire game in just 5.5 weeks. Just think about it. An entire game in a little over a month. The result was a game many people consider one of the worst ever made. But Atari was totally confident, producing 4 million cartridges, more than the number of consoles it even sold that year. People bought it, hated it, and returned it in droves. until returns outnumbered sales. Atari's warehouses were filled with millions of unsold cartridges. And do you know what they did with them? September 1983. Atari secretly hauled the unsold cartridges out to a pit in the desert at the town of Alamogordo, New Mexico. They covered them with dirt, then poured concrete on top so no one could dig them back up. This is the grave I told you about at the start. For decades, this story was passed around like a mere legend, and no one knew if it was true. Until, in 2014, a team was given permission to actually dig that pit up. And they really found it. Cartridges of E.T. and many other terrible games buried under the desert for nearly 30 years. The legend had become real. But that burial was only a symbol of a much bigger disaster. In just 2 years, the entire American video game industry collapsed. The market's value shrank from $3.2 billion down to just $100 million. 97% gone. Atari lost over $500 million, and game companies went bankrupt one after another. Stores stopped selling games, and analysts declared that video games were just a passing fad, one that had now died. In the eyes of Americans back then, games were finished. The era was over. But they forgot to look at the other side of the world. In Japan, one small company was thinking differently. That company was called Nintendo. They looked at the disaster in America and concluded that the problem wasn't the game console itself. The problem was the terrible games that no one controlled. So when Nintendo made its move on America, they did the opposite of Atari in every way. They locked their console down tight, putting in a special chip that made pirated cartridges unplayable, and every game that could run on it had to be approved by Nintendo first. They even limited how many games a single company could release per year, so bad games couldn't flood the market like before. They created a seal of quality stamped onto every game that met their standard. And to win back the confidence of retailers, Nintendo even guaranteed that if a console didn't sell, they'd buy it back themselves. And to erase the memory that games were dead and gone, they even changed the look of the console, making it resemble a home appliance rather than a toy. In 1985, Nintendo's console stepped into America, along with a game that changed the world, a mustachioed plumber named Mario. And it worked. Games came back to life once again. Nintendo revived the entire industry the world had declared dead and brought it back to life. And that disaster left behind one important result. Power in the games industry moved from America into the hands of Japan for nearly 20 years. But there's another truth people tend to forget. In reality, it was only the console that crashed. During that same period, games on the personal computer never died at all. While consoles were collapsing in America, home computers were in a price war, getting cheaper and cheaper, and people happily played games on them. The PC and the arcade were the two legs that held the industry up on the day the console fell. Games never had just one path to survival. They always have many. This is why they can never truly die. After Nintendo revived the industry, a new war began. This time it wasn't about survival, but about seizing the throne. Sega challenged Nintendo, igniting a fierce console war. Then a new player appeared, Sony, with the PlayStation, which knocked Nintendo off its throne in 1995. Later, Microsoft jumped into the war too, with the Xbox in 2001. Competition as brutal as a movie drove games to improve faster and faster, with better graphics and more fun. And games didn't stop there. They pushed into the online world, connecting players across the globe. They jumped into your phone, turning everyone into a gamer without even realizing it. And in 2022, a new kind of handheld game device was born, taking the industry back to its old dream. Games you can carry and play anywhere. From a small round screen in a lab, to an entire world that fits in your pocket. So, the next time you pick up a device to play a game, whether it's a phone, a console, or a PC, remember, the thing in your hands is a survivor. It survived the day the whole world declared it dead, survived a burial pit in the middle of the desert, survived a war that never stops. The games you play so casually today, to reach your hands, they fell and rose again, more times than you can count.